I always come to Good Friday with mixed emotions. On one hand, we're remembering a horrific death. Crucifixion was a terrible way to die. The Gospels spare us the gruesome details, but even from what we read, we know that death on a Roman cross was slow, painful, humiliating. Moreover, this particular execution represented the breakdown of all human connections. It came about because one of Jesus' friends betrayed him. And his other friends, men who promised to stand by him, either ran to hide or denied they even knew him. Peter, the friend who confessed that Jesus was the Holy One of God, who had vowed to die for him, denied Jesus not once, but repeatedly. And as we know, there certainly was no justice from religious or civil authorities here. The story that we remember today is not a story that I'm glad to hear again. On the other hand, I've heard this story many times before. I know how it ends. In 3 days, it will be Sunday. In the words of preacher S.M. Lockridge, it's Friday. Jesus is praying, Peter is sleeping, Judas is betraying, but Sunday is coming. It's Friday, Pilate's struggling, the council's conspiring, the crowd is vilifying, and they don't even know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. I know that if I can just white knuckle it through these next few days, the story's going to turn out okay. Jesus was betrayed and killed, but God will turn this story around, right? This is just one bad weekend. But remarkably, none of the Gospels just white knuckle it through this story. None of the Gospels just wait for Sunday. And while Lockridge's words are something I love, I'm not sure that we should white knuckle it through Holy Week either. Each gospel tells the story of this death clearly and explicitly. Each gospel highlights this holy moment, perhaps the holiest of moments. This moment of Jesus' life and humanity's existence coming to a head. Even if the Gospels don't dwell on the most gruesome details, they each consciously walk us through the event which we're remembering here today. This event, which was the point of Jesus' life, Jesus had come for this. How then can we so remember the events of this day that we understand them as holy? How is the death an enactment rather than a betrayal of the purposes of God? To use John's words, how do we actually see this as Jesus' hour? John's account of this long hour actually begins the evening before Jesus was crucified, where he washes the feet of his disciples and he talks to them about what's to come. He gives them his last teachings, or so they think. He prays for them and then goes out with his disciples to the Kidron Valley to a garden, the garden that they had gone many times before. See, Judas knew this garden, and it was no problem for him to find Jesus there. He knew where Jesus would be. In the garden, John tells us, this friend, his betrayer, comes with a detachment of armed men. Twice Jesus has to identify himself so that they arrest the right person. See, Jesus wanted no mistake to be made. Jesus knew what was to happen next. It was happening on purpose. It was happening because he chose it. In this moment, Peter takes out a sword to defend them, acting as one might expect he were protecting a worldly kingdom. And Jesus reprimands him. See, Jesus wasn't avoiding this. The kingdom of Jesus is not of this world. He'll drink of this cup set before him. And so Jesus comes before the religious authorities and is questioned about all of his teachings. Outside, Peter warms his hands at the fire made by those who arrested Jesus. Inside, Jesus insists he has spoken openly and wonders why his accusers can't find a witness to his teachings, while Peter denies his association with Jesus 3 times. No one will admit to knowing anything about Jesus now that he's in trouble. What Jesus chooses to do, he must do alone. The longest section of John's Passion narrative, longer than any of the other Gospels, is the account of Jesus before the civil authorities. Pilate goes in and out of his headquarters, arguing with religious authorities, debating with Jesus, showing by his movements and his questions his discomfort at being called to make this judgment. We can see clearly that Pilate actually doesn't want anything to do with this religious rivalry. Take him yourselves and judge him accordingly to your law, Pilate says, but there's no backing down for those who wanted Jesus killed. Then Pilate asked Jesus the critical question, so are you the king of the Jews? Jesus knows Pilate doesn't really care about the answer, that he's only asking because he's been pressured to do so. And Jesus answers that his kingdom is not of this world, which is to say that Jesus' kingdom is not established or defended in the same way as other kingdoms. His kingdom is a kingdom of truth, and so often, as it happens with political leaders, an appeal to the truth confuses Pilate. But Pilate doesn't give up. He suggests that Jesus could be released as a part of the annual pardon, but the crowds choose a criminal for release instead. And Pilate allows Jesus to be dressed and ridiculed as a king. Pilate's soldiers flog him and give him a crown of thorns. They dress him in a royal purple robe before striking him and taunting him. Even then, Pilate looks to Jesus to give him answers that will pacify the crowd, but self-defense is not the way of Jesus' kingdom. Jesus says that if Pilate had not been given power over him from above, Pilate would not be in the position to do anything. The statement is full of irony. Pilate is this political puppet of Rome, but Jesus is speaking of the power of God. And finally, Jesus' enemies demand that this imposter king be punished unless Pilate wants to be known as an enemy of the emperor. And Pilate gives in. Throughout this long exchange, John has juxtaposed Jesus' kingdom with these other kingdoms, making it clear that Jesus' fate was not determined by his enemies or by political powers. No, they didn't take Jesus' life from him. He gave it. John's making it clear that this death is an enactment of an obedient life. And so Jesus is taken out to Golgotha. He's crucified between 2 others. And at Pilate's insistence, a title plaque, King of the Jews, is put on the cross. The soldiers divide his clothes and gamble for his tunic. From his elevated position, Jesus sees his mother and commends her to the care of another disciple. He asks for a final drink, and then he dies. The soldiers do not break his legs, but they pierce his side to ensure he's dead. 2 religiously observant men take him down from the cross because they don't want to leave him hanging over the holy days of Passover. And they lay him in a nearby grave. The long hour has ended. So how does careful attention to John's story help me with my mixed emotions on this day? Can we understand how John has depicted Good Friday as a holy moment, not just a moment of disappointment and confusion? Well, John's very clear that this is Jesus' moment and no one else's. Jesus went to where he would be easily found by his betrayer. He makes sure that there's no confusion as to who they're looking for. He refuses Peter's frail attempt at violent defense. He doesn't interfere with the religious and civil dialogue, despite knowing that he's innocent. No, he ends up carrying his own cross. He doesn't act in his divine power to stop all of this. No, Jesus chose this. Jesus chose this for you. He came to do this. No one is taking life from him. Jesus is offering up his life that we all might know life. This didn't come out of the blue. This moment has been prophesied about for years, decades, even centuries before. See, we can't hear this story of Jesus' suffering on this particular Good Friday without also thinking about the suffering of our world. I think that's what makes this Good Friday so difficult. We can seemingly relate. I think it's possible for the strategies that John uses in telling us about Jesus' death can help us in our present hour. See, John reminds us, for example, that our suffering is actually not like Jesus' suffering. His belonged to his purpose. The Son of God chose this suffering to enable life for the world. See, his dark hour established a kingdom of light for all people. He gives this light for the life of the world. In contrast, our dark hour derives from the same world gone awry, but unlike Jesus, we're not paying a price because our battle has already been won. Death has already been defeated. We can sit in this honor of Good Friday knowing that an empty tomb is waiting for us in just a few days. When I reread this story, I grieve the betrayal and denial by his friends. I dislike Peter's political maneuvering and centrist stance. I'm frustrated at the miscarriage of justice. I feel Mary's anguish as she stands and watches her son suffering and die. This is a dark day. Of that there is no doubt. And John does not pretend it is anything else. See, we cannot try to white knuckle it. We can't try to white knuckle it through our hardships and our suffering, hoping for their end. Because that's not the example Jesus gives us. No, see, we're welcomed into a dwelling, into the grief and confusion of the moment. In a sense, we're welcomed into our own lives, to recognize, to acknowledge the heaviness of our own disappointment and fear. But we do so knowing we don't need to white knuckle our hope. See, it may be Friday, but Sunday's coming. This is a dark time, but in the darkest hours, we find the holiest moment. So sit in that grief. Sit in the confusion. It's heavy. Of that there is no doubt. But the battle is won. You don't need to white knuckle it through Holy Week. You don't need to white knuckle it through your sufferings. You know why? Sunday's coming. In fact, it's right around the corner. So we suffer. Life is hard. But because of Jesus' suffering on this very day, we cling to hope. We cling to hope. It's Good Friday, but Sunday's coming.